All right, welcome everybody to our July Forgotten Grapes virtual tasting featuring our Spotlight Winery of the Month, Cuatro Dias, and its owner and winemaker, Greg Allen. We are excited to have him and, of course, excited to have all of you here with us tonight. Allison is joining us, but as you can tell, she is not in her usual location. She is on location in Sonoma, where she's doing her interviews for the Slow Wine Guide. Say hi, Allison.
Hello, everyone. Um, I was going to get back to my room in time, but chatting with a friend and having a glass of wine and lost track of time and just figured I'd call and say hi and check in and hello.
we will we will allow it. So
it's a
it's all
it's a
good.
3 week it's a 3 week road trip up the coast of California to do about 30 interviews. So it's crazy. And for Stacey's question, I'm in Sebastopol right now. I'm actually at the Redwood where Chris and I had lunch when we were here in June.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. And it's all for this little bad boy book, which those of you who got the VIP tickets at the Festival of Forgotten Grapes, you have your copy of the Slow Wine Guide, and Allison is one of the featured writers in it. So keep an eye out for the next edition, which comes out, I believe, right about the beginning of the year, early
yep.
January, February, when the next edition will come out. But she's hard at work putting together those profiles on all of the wineries that what is a slow wine, Allison?
A winery that follows the ethos like slow food. The number one thing is they do not use any herbicides in their farming. And then obviously making balanced wines and having the ethos of well-made, balanced, delicious wines. But it starts with your ethical farming practices. No herbicides, no glyphosate, no Roundup, no cancer killers or cancer causes.
Yeah, cancer killers would be good. Cancer causes not so bad.
But I'm the sucker who has to do 70 wineries this month. So just, you know.
They literally couldn't do it without you.
Literally, no.
Yep, perfect. So Allison may be dropping off, and she's going to continue her conversation with our friend Marcy, and we may see her later. We will see, but as she drives back down south. So thanks for joining us, and for everybody else, the chat is open. We're muting everybody during the conversation, but if you've got any questions for Greg, please throw them into the chat, and I will ask them as we undergo the conversation. But with that in mind, I want to introduce today's featured winemaker, Greg Allen from Cuatro Dias. Those of you who have attended the Festival of Forgotten Grapes the last 2 years are probably familiar with him. He's been a staple at both of the events. One of the great kind of unsung winemakers, technically your winery is based in Paso, but you live down in Torrance in Southern California. So he kind of straddles two worlds. We're excited to have him. Stacey already says she loves your wines with 3 exclamation points, which is high praise because I know Stacey's palate is very discerning. But Greg, we always start our conversations by asking you, what is the most memorable bottle of wine that you've ever opened?
Well, looking back, I would have to say it was the straight Cabernet from Napa. It was Scarecrow.
Mm.
And at that time, I think it was more moderately priced. But I tell people all the time, if you taste a wine and it's $20 and it's the best you've ever tasted, you win. But you chase something like Scarecrow now, I think it's some ungodly $900, $1,200 a bottle. So yeah, not so sure. It's not an everyday drinker when you're at home having pizza. So
No, bourbons and wines, I feel, are the same way. If you can find a good everyday sipper at $20, $30, $40, jump on that. You don't have to have $100 plus bottles to
exactly right.
for quality. It's definitely not necessarily a case of quality, or I guess what you get what you pay for type of a
Yeah.
situation. Um, It's funny you mentioned Scarecrow because yesterday I was trolling on a an unnamed social network and I saw somebody posted a photo from their local Costco. They did not post where it was, but under a glass case in Costco, they had a vertical of Scarecrow and a vertical of Screaming Eagle that were available. And I think the Scarecrow was like 35.99, something like that. And the Screaming Eagle was like 76.99. And that's, you know, no decimal point in there, like $7,699 versus
What it's gone up to,
so
yeah.
yeah, somebody was pointing out that we've officially reached the end of scarcity. If the wines that you always thought were truly cult and only available to lists are now available at Costco. So
Oh, yeah. And keep in mind, they're putting probably their commitment monetarily to that wine is no different oftentimes than what we're making in Lodi, Paso Robles, Sonoma County. But it's a great markup if you can get it.
yeah, I've seen some fantastic blog posts and stories about folks, especially winemakers, breaking down exactly what it costs to make $100 bottle of wine, a $50 bottle of wine, and other than the cost of grapes, the economics are pretty much you know, static between there. So the only difference is that cost of grapes. But even then, after you get past probably 40, $50, really what you're paying for is marketing and branding at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Well, that's a fantastic transition to talk a little bit about Cuatro Dias, because one of the things we love about your wines is you just have a fantastic quality to value ratio. You definitely make wines that are affordable to everybody, as we've noticed at the Festival of Forgotten Grapes, but you're not afraid to experiment, to work with more unusual grapes, to make one-off lots. You're making lots of different wines. One of those that you really don't see a whole lot that we're going to start with tonight is the Orange Moscato that you make, the 2023 Orange Moscato. How do you decide which grapes to work with every vintage, which wines to sort of keep going, when to bring in new wines? What's your decision-making process?
The strange part of it is you kind of have to make what people are buying. So you readily go back, sometimes, a lot of times, same vineyard, same varietals. But I'm very well known for, somebody accused me once, they said, I'll always take in a stray dog. And where it started was the stray dog was meeting somebody there that they had a vineyard or another winery where they had these grapes. And they would say, nobody's buying these. I remember, I think one of the first was Vermentino,
Mhm.
and the farmer couldn't sell it, vineyard couldn't sell it, and it was overripe. And I remember the guy that had the lease on that property said, got all this grapes over there, nobody wants it, nobody can sell it, and it's called Vermentino. And I knew that it was a beautiful Italian wine. It went well with food. And he said to me, if you pay my pickers, you can take as much as you want. And it came out so good. He told me, you'll never get that again because then it's tough. But every once in a while, like the Alicante that you're having in the Lagrein tonight, and the Malvasia that you're going to find in the Kaylani were stray dogs that came in. And when you make them, the issue comes where when it comes out really nice, you have to keep going back and getting it if you can over and over.
Yeah.
So yeah, I never miss out on something that just walks in the door. I love trying it.
Yeah, it's, I guess in a sense, it's a little bit like the drug dealer's economics. You know, you're getting sort of a free or low cost sample up front as the producer to try it out. And if it's a big hit among your people, well, then you've got to come back and pay full price for it the next time you're interested.
Yeah, by the way, I never got that Vermentino again, and it sold out as soon as I had a bottle. It was out for matter of months and it was gone.
Wow.
Beautiful wine.
Yeah. Well, if you're looking for some Vermentino this year, I know a place that's got some available. So
Uh, we will definitely talk about that. I love it.
yeah,
Beautiful.
absolutely. No, I love Vermentino too. When I launched Paso Seco, my sparkling brand, we were looking to launch with a white Rhone varietal. We ultimately settled on Grenache Blanc, but we were definitely on the hunt for Vermentino because we thought that would be just beautiful in a sparkling. We just couldn't find enough of it at the time. But like you and I were talking about beforehand, and you kind of mentioned here, one of the really interesting components of the harvest that most people don't think about is that kind of late in the game, the stuff that hasn't sold, the overcropped, maybe overripe, or somebody who signed up for it, had a contract or agreed to it, and then at the last minute pulls out. So it feels like in the wine world, there's always deals to be made, or stray dogs to bring in. It's just a matter of knowing the right people and having your ear out there.
So for me, for everybody that's been to Paso Robles, there's technically two really nice coffee places downtown. And if you go into those places, technically, or during that time, you're running into vineyard owners and the folks that are out there managing acreage. And that's where your ear is to the ground and you start to hear those things, what's available. And they'll ask, a lot of times they'll approach you when they find out you're a winemaker. And that's where you can come into contact with a lot of that stuff. So really nice.
Nice. So let's talk about the orange Moscato. How did you come across these grapes? I know these come from the Four Sisters Ranch out in the Pleasant Valley area, kind of on the north side of Paso, northeast side. How did you come to discover the orange Muscat grape and decide to not only make wine from it, but to do a dry version of the orange Muscat?
So the thing that happened there is I had been making certain wines off and on for Four Sister Winery as a contract winemaker. And orange Moscato, which is what I made, is typically orange Muscat. And most people have had that as a dessert wine.
Right.
In fact, when we open this, first thing a person usually does is when they hear what it is pull their glass and say, I don't like sweet wines. So you have to explain to them the process. But Four Sister Ranch, like you said, Pleasant Valley Trail, San Miguel, and roughly 90 tons of this comes off. And you can make 90 tons worth, but to have this is nice to have a certain amount, but 90 tons would last you quite a long time.
It's a lot, yeah.
So I decided at that point if I were to harvest part of it early and make it into a Moscato, because technically the orange Muscat grape has such great orange, apricot, and citrus on the nose, honey blossom. It makes a great wine, but also a great food wine. So I brought it in at a low brick and made it in a very cold tank and made sure no oxygen got to it. And this is what came out of it. Also, I took the other half of it because we didn't want to have too much just still orange Moscato, and I turned that into sparkling orange Moscato. So same thing, right around the same bricks, but I took it over and used the delistage method, and it came out really nice. This wine in particular, again, there are a couple people here in the area. If you are a fan of charcuterie boards and you know all the different cheeses, you should not serve that board without this wine because it stands up to not only all the different cheeses, whatever they are, but it actually stands up to meat also. You know, that apricot, you know, all the things you would see on a charcuterie board. Almost every wine I make, and we'll talk about it as we go forward,
Yeah.
I make to pair with some kind of food. I like to cook. I
Mhm.
like to eat even more, but this one in particular has that. And the nose on this, you could pick up the oranges. I tell people sometimes if you're in a closed space and you open this wine in the kitchen, the folks in the living room could typically get the nose on this. And then you could actually uh, not only smell that, but you can taste it as well, which is one of the reasons I really like this, and the sparkling, the sister of this wine. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you find you get some confusion from consumers? Obviously, you know, the initial conventional wisdom when you hear orange muscat is that's going to be a sweet wine. But then to sort of double down with the name Moscato, which most people, when they hear a Moscato, they think of a sweet sparkling wine, Italian, obviously. Um, I imagine, you know, there's a lot of hand selling and education that's required to let people know, no, 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 this is still, and it's dry.
Every single tasting, they put the glass out and immediately it comes back and they think that it's going to be the traditional orange muscat, which is outstanding as a dessert wine. If it's not overdone, it's very nice. But you know, I would say if you had between 35 and 70 cases of a port wine of that every year, you're probably right where you need to be for the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the holidays come anyways, but yeah.
Nice. No, this is delicious. So let's talk a little bit about your background. I'm fascinated how you got to Four Sisters, but before that, you know, one of the things I love about Paso Robles is this wide array of careers that most of the people who are winemakers in the area, vineyard owners, had before they started their wineries, started their brand. You are the only firefighter that I know of doing it. So,
There's Frisbee
okay.
uh, at Paso Robles. Josh Frisbee's an Orange County firefighter. And then Hook and Ladder, I think, near San Francisco, is a
Oh,
retired
right. Yeah.
San Francisco fireman. And all of his wines are named after something very technical in the fire department. Like he has a wine, a red wine blend called the Tillerman. And the tiller spot in a fire department, when you see the large fire truck with the ladder on the back, the guy that drives the back is the tillerman. So
Oh,
it's a unique experience there. But I did 30 years in the fire department. I just retired. I was a fireman. I was in the tillerman spot. I drove the back of the truck. I was a paramedic, and I was also a peace officer, and I did arson investigations for our city.
oh, wow.
It was really, I mean, it was one of the greatest careers ever. But in 2001, I went to a wine tasting at Firestone when they were in the San Ynez area.
Hmm.
And I'd always liked wine, but I really thought at that point how unique the wines were in different areas. And that prompted me. I knew I liked chemistry, botany, art, and all of those things come together actually when you're making wine. And I immediately started taking classes on my days off. I've been to everything now from UC Davis to Washington State. I continually, I mean, winemaking is nearing medicine now. There's always continuing education, there's new
Right.
things coming online. So, originally, when, of course, living in Los Angeles, when I was pretty much done with school, they said, you need to go somewhere and work as an intern. And they said, where do you live? And when I told them where I lived, they thought I was crazy. They said, we don't know where we could send you. Are you willing to drive all the time? I was still a full-time fireman. And eventually they called me one day and they said, you know, there is a winery in your area. And they said the owner of that winery is a UC Davis graduate. And it ended up being the old San Antonio winery in downtown LA.
Oh yeah.
I went down there and they immediately said, welcome aboard. I was
Nice.
down there for years. I look back now and I think from what I'm doing now to how they make wine in very large amounts, very, very different.
Right.
And but I'm glad I had that experience. They have a tank farm down there with about 400 tanks. Things are done in massive amounts. And now they also have a plant in Paso Robles called Riesling.
Yes.
But I made monastic wine there. I made wine for different restaurants. I made it for them. And one day I just decided that it was time to be on my own and break away. And I'm now going into, I think this will be my 25th harvest now.
Wow. That's amazing. But you've continued to stay up until recently with the firefighting as well. Is that just something that was in your blood? Was it, a different type of excitement or skill set, or why did you stick with both instead of, jumping into wine full time?
Well, I was like every little boy growing up. Everybody wanted to be a fireman. I was lucky enough to have made it. It was not an easy trail. Uh, it was a gift in life to have had that career, and it was hard to leave, but and it really is a day job. It's your retirement, your benefits, and your
Right.
prevailing wage. Many times, San Antonio had asked me to quit my firefighting job and come over there full time, and there was no comparison. I mean, they're both a labor of love, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day. In fact, many people, and I'm surprised it hasn't come up yet, but people say, how did you get the name Cuatro Dias? That, of course, translates to 4 day, and firemen work 2 days on and 4 days off.
Mm.
When I started my winery and I was trying to figure out what to name it, the fire chief at the time, they have to sign off on any side work we do. And one day he finally got fed up with me asking about making wine. And he said, all right, I'm going to sign it. I don't give a damn what you do as long as you do it on your 4 day. And that's why I named the winery that. That's where the name came from. Yeah.
Nice. Well, yeah, I imagine wine is kind of a no-no in the firehouse during the days you're on, because you've got to remain sober because you never know when the siren's going to kick on and you're going to get the call.
It was constant. We had an old chief there many years ago. And if you brought wine in, even to cook with it, he would salt the wine.
Hmm. Oh,
Nobody
wow.
could drink it. And and then when I was at San Antonio, you could work in the lab there and have 40 samples of wine a day, whites and reds, and you would use maybe 10 to 20 milliliters of that wine to do the testing. And we would take the wine and dump it into a 55-gallon plastic drum together, whites and reds, rosés. And at the end, they would take it all downstairs in the cellar, salt it, mix it, and turn it into, that was their cooking wine in the boxes. And restaurants would order it. So in an Italian restaurant, when they cooked with wine, typically it was San Antonio's wine, or Franzia was doing that at the same time. Yeah,
Right. That's interesting. I did not know that they were salting cookie wine. That is
yeah, a little salt in it, so guys wouldn't drink it. But
right. Exactly.
you're right. Last thing you want to do, I mean, I would love to have had wine there, but last thing you want to do is get up on a roof and cut a hole while you're a little lightheaded.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Have you found any like crossover from your skills as a firefighter into the winemaking?
Chemistry and a strong back. Strong back during a harvest. Thank God I never really got hurt terribly. Everybody has some kind of injury, but chemistry, when I was an arson investigator, I took tons of chemistry and winemaking, and even as a paramedic, a lot of chemistry. But the issue comes when you make wine, you are in chemistry the entire harvest, the entire bottling process. So to have that understanding and, just formulas, those kind of things have benefited me very well
No,
across. Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. And you got your start kind of out in like the Whittier area on the fire side of things, right?
I was in city of Redondo Beach.
Oh, you were in Redondo Beach. I thought you were out a
I,
little bit east
it,
first and then
yeah, but like I said, it was a tough job to get.
yeah.
And it's a little easier now, believe it or not, than it used to be. But I was in the era where you would show up, they would have one or two openings, and you would camp out in line at City Hall to get an application with about 1,500 other people.
Wow.
And then that was start you in the testing process. So, yeah, very lucky to have had that. And yeah, great career.
Scott wants to know, given your background in firefighting, do you gravitate towards wines with smoke taint? I don't know if he's being facetious or non-facetious.
So, smoke taint, we have actually seen in Paso Robles when
Yeah.
the smoke came down into those. The thing to know about that is it is capable of getting in on the grape skin. It's capable of getting in even on the leaves, foliar smoke taint. I've had eucalyptus taint, smoke
Mm,
taint, very expensive to remove it, and it hurts the wine when it comes off. There is processes, but if you're a good wine sales guy, you're like a used car salesman. You could tell somebody, well, this is a very unique wine that look at this, nobody else has this, but it's a fault that can come
I
off.
I've saved it. There was an article on slate.com this past week from an author that I've never heard of, basically making the claim that smoke tainted wines are something positive to be accepted. And of course, she's based up in Oregon, so she only interviewed two winemakers who were, of course, trying to sell their smoky wines that they were doing, but she didn't have a lot of other anecdotal evidence other than just those particular guys. So it was quite fun. I posted it to some of my wine groups and been like, this is what they're trying to sell you on these days.
Oh, it's the same thing, like there's guys out there when you buy oak, there's different toast on the oak, and I've seen people over oak wine.
Yeah.
And if you're the winemaker, you call it unique. If you're the person buying it, you just say, this is not something I like. I mean, you might like it over oak, like Pinot Noirs and some of if you're making an old world white, you can certainly over oak things. It's like the argument with Chardonnay. It's either middle of the road or it's stainless steel or it's heavy oaky and buttery. So
Right.
you deal with that all the time. But you always have to listen to your customer base. There are things that work and there are things that just don't work. And trying to sell it is, you know,
That's
it's hard to go door to door.
that's the other half of the job. People don't realize when they're like, "Oh, I'm going to start a winery," that making the wine is only half the job. It's getting out there, finding your customer base, selling it, and then bringing them back for more is sometimes even more difficult than the production of wine.
Well, the winemaker is like the chef of a nice restaurant. Problem is, you know, there's so many other factors that come into play with that stuff, and it's hard in the end. I tell people it's like if I hand you a combination lock and tell you to open it. It's like that every year when the grapes come in. You know, even if you do the same thing when you're trying to mimic something, you know, let's say you make a wine like that gets you can get 100 points in Wine Spectator. You could try and do everything the same way the next year, but it doesn't mean it's going to work. Maybe
Absolutely.
it won't, but you got to do what the customers want. And you know, when you bring in as I called the stray dogs earlier, I could bring in a grape that nobody's heard of. Like if I take Lagrein into a steakhouse and try and sell it, nobody comes in and says, "Give me your best Lagrein." They're looking at cabs and Sauv Blancs. So,
I
you know,
do, but I'm the rare exception to the rule. Yes.
and I would do the same as you. And
Yeah.
I ask where it comes from. But yeah, we would be more unique
Yeah,
than the
exactly. It
average.
becomes much more of a hand sell at that point. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, Larry and Sandy say making smoke tainted wine is a good thing, putting lipstick on a pig, and we live in that era right now. I think they're also being facetious. We got a lot of sarcasm in the conversations tonight. So
You talked about one thing, putting lipstick on a pig. That's one way of saying, you know, so going back, I could remember people telling me when I learned to make wine, I used to think the winemaker, you know, and you've all heard the term wine shepherds. And these are folks that let the grapes come in. They're very minimal. They barely touch the stuff. They use natural yeast. And the shepherd walks alongside and just moves it, and something good hopefully comes out. And then there's the winemaker, and this is the lipstick on the pig. You beat it, kick it, yell at it, and at the end, you put lipstick on a pig if you have to. But I used to tell people the wine shepherd's job is easy. The winemaker's job is a little bit tougher because
mhm.
you must make something good out of no matter what happens.
Yep.
You're going to steer it into something that is going to be really good for you, and it's going to be good for the consumer, and it just has to taste good and age well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine your time at San Antonio, that's a big part of it is that sort of brand consistency, kind of the anti-old world aesthetic of, every vintage should tell a unique story and every wine should taste different to encapsulate that particular year. But it seems like New World winemaking is this is our brand, this is what we make. We need to make sure that this tastes exactly the same so that no matter what year somebody's pulling a bottle, they know exactly what they're going to get with it.
Yeah, you know, technically, when I went to school and when you start thinking about all these different wines and varietals, what's typically taught today or was taught then was you're making red table wine, pink table wine, or white table wine.
Mhm.
And what that meant, and they just called it table wine. And then they said, or it could be ultra premium. But they kind of alluded to the lower alcohols and just good, clean, crisp, drinkable table wine. And now, when you move on and you start doing small lots and custom lots, and if you go to Paso Robles or you go to Napa, you'll see much, there's so many different tastes and varietals and blends and
Right.
higher alcohols and deeper, darker, sweeter. And that craft really takes place long after you leave the sterile table wine making.
Yeah. It sounds a little bit like my girlfriend Teresa is an attorney, and she always says they don't teach you how to be a lawyer in law school. They basically teach you how to think and accept information and be analytical, but you don't really learn the law until your first job out of law school. So you're not a lawyer as soon as you graduate, no matter what they say, or even when you pass the bar.
Make a 16.5% alcohol Syrah from Paso Robles. Put it in a heavy bottle. If you do that at UC Davis, they'll tell you did something wrong to it. sell it in Paso Robles. It's worth $150 a bottle, and everybody buys it up.
Exactly. Yeah, you put the right label on it and give it the right name with a story on it, and
Right?
you're selling
It's
out.
good.
So yeah, Patty and David, they asked, isn't that the mantra that every year should resemble the last one? And that's really the divide between the kind of old world mentality where every year should be different because it needs to be a reflection of what's happening to that vintage, whether it's rainy, whether it's dry, whether you're dropping fruit, whether you're keeping it, whether you have heat spikes, whether the birds are getting it, the deer are getting it, what it might be. That's kind of like your seasonal farm to table restaurant where the menu rotates on a monthly or a uh, quarterly basis. So every time you go in, you're going to be getting something completely new, but you trust the chef, you trust the restaurant, you know they're producing the finest ingredients versus the other side, which is more the McDonald'sization or the TGI Fridays, which is, you can go anywhere in the world, walk into a McDonald's, and a Big Mac is going to taste like a Big Mac. And same thing, you can go, go buy a bottle of the Prisoner anywhere around the country, or buy a bottle of Rombauer Chardonnay, and it doesn't matter if it's a 2025 or a 2021 or a 1999. Odds are it's going to be the exact same wine.
Yeah, someplace like when I hear that, I think of J. Lore, and J. Lore pumps out tons of Cabernet.
Yep.
And over there, their winemaking practices, I don't know how they do it, but it comes out nearly the same all the time, year round, year after year. I've watched them change, pull out old vines, put in new vines, but still they manage it. They even buy from other vineyards, but still at the end of the day, it kind of tastes similar. So, looking at harvest for me, and I make wine for not only myself and for sister now, but I make wine for about 6 other labels where I'm their contract winemaker. So when my day starts during harvest, it's a 7-day work week, starts about 5 in the morning and ends sometimes at midnight or 1 a.m. In the back of your mind, you're trying to make what you made last time or get as close as you can. And I call it throwing horseshoes. You might throw a ringer again this year, but you might get close to the pin. But it is true. It should reflect the weather or anything else of that season. And we were talking earlier, this proves to be a really nice season. Weather's been mild, everything's kind of going along just as it should, but at the end of the day, we just don't know what to expect. And Paso Robles, we've had these incredible heat spikes, which gets the sugar where it shouldn't be before you get all the tannins and everything you need in the skin. So it's a true balancing act, but you do your best all the time. And, in Europe, things don't always get ripe. They're allowed to add sugar to it there. We can't do that here, but you brought up a rainy season. I worked one rainy season many years ago, and it's just got to do the best with what you have all the time, and you worry about it constantly.
Yeah.
Sleepless.
No, in the last 3 years, 23, 24, and now 25 are perfect examples of just the huge vagaries in what's happening in Paso Robles
Yeah,
between, 23 was such a cool year for most of the summer, fall, even some summer rains that we had here, which are very unheard
yeah,
of, and a lot of late harvesting, so a lot of fruit hanging, but uh, better for ripeness. And then 24 was a year where a lot of people dropped fruit. I know a few that didn't even make wines, and then we had those big heat
yeah,
spikes in September and October and August as well that led to a lot of people pulling grapes, before they were completely ready because they were afraid of those sugar spikes you were talking about.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's illegal no matter what the weather is here to add sugar. It's called chaptalization. It's just not allowed. But I think a few folks found a way around it, and I think they were adding concentrated, products that have a sugar of about 30. And oftentimes people add that prior to bottling, but I think they were adding it then. And, yeast will eat any kind of sugar it can get its hands on. But
That's
the
true.
balancing act is there again, that's tough to do.
Yeah, you've just got to find the right yeast to, if you've got a higher sugar content, you've got to have a more robust yeast to get through it, or you'll basically gorge them and they'll die early.
It's the things I worry about.
Perfect. Before we move off of the Moscato, you mentioned the charcuterie, this pairing well not only with the cheeses but the meats. Any other food pairings with the orange Moscato?
I did a wine dinner in a restaurant, and I'll never forget, this chef is great. If anybody's down here in the South Bay, he had a restaurant that was around since the 70s. His name is Robert Velvet. He had a restaurant called Chez Melange, but he also had a Italian restaurant. And when we paired this with, he made on the base of the plate, and it was a small plate, it's called a cornage, but on top he sat this beautiful scallop, and he chopped up a little bit of onion, a little bit of pineapple, and put it on top and paired it with this. And the citrus with the scallop, and I would imagine shrimp or any other seafood would be beautiful with that.
Yeah, Scott really would like to pair this with oysters, and I could see that kind of the fruitiness of this wine, those orange notes pairing with the brininess of oysters would be delicious. And your pairing, I can definitely see the pineapple really popping when it hits the acid and the
Wonderful.
citrus of this. Yeah, beautiful. Perfect. Well, let's move on to the Kaylani. And as you might be able to see, my bottle is completely empty because we finished this on Tuesday. It was so good. We decided to open it up and try it and enjoyed it. What I find interesting about you and your winemaking is most of what you do is single varietal wines. Not necessarily as the shepherd, although with single varietal wines, it's a bit more of that shepherding, but this is one of the few blends it feels like you do. And I think your only white blend, if I'm not mistaken. So how did the Kaylani come to be?
So,
Kaylani, excuse me.
yeah, I've got a lot of that's named after a granddaughter, actually, and she chose the label, and it means goddess of the sea. That's why it looks like that's why it looks like the ocean on there. So she chose that too.
It's sort of a cross between ocean waves and like angel wings. It's kind of an interesting motif there.
Junior lifeguard. She's a great swimmer, surfer. But at the end of the day, this comes off of 3 different vineyards. And what happens with me, and if anybody buys any of my other wines that are not unique grapes, but in reds, I've got probably 4 or 5 blends out there. This is the one white wine I blended. And the base is Malvasia. So I made Malvasia. It was the stray dog that came in.
Mm-hmm.
And then one night I started blending, and I thought, what am I going to do with this? Again, when we take the Malvasia to sell it, nobody is going to buy that unless you got a tasting room.
Right.
But it came out, it was very aromatic, very nice. So the orange Moscato that we just had, I started doing a blend, adding a little bit of orange Moscato in there. And then I had a little bit of Chardonnay that I made that year. So then I blended a little Chardonnay, and there were multiple, maybe 15 iterations, but this is the one that balanced perfectly so you've got a little bit of orange Moscato in there to fix just bring the nose out on it a little more and make it a really great nose. And then the Chardonnay kind of gave it a little backbone. And this is what came out of it. This pairs with any seafood, any cheeses, even chicken, um, any chicken or dishes like that. But great aromatics, and it has you'll notice a little bit of backbone from that Chardonnay on there. Yeah,
Yeah. Malvasia Bianca, of course, a highly aromatic grape. We've featured that a few times in our club, and just has almost similar to the Muscat, that kind of floral blossom, very pungent, in a
yeah,
positive way, very floral, strong nose that when you open it up, you can definitely tell, across the room that it's being opened.
yeah. The very first wine contest I sent it to, I think it was San Francisco Chronicle show,
Hmm.
and it got a gold immediately.
Nice.
And it has that honeysuckle in it, and I mean just a beautiful wine. But it will stand up to fatty fish and game hens and things like that. But yeah, I was really happy with it. And now this is one of those, I made that 1 year only, didn't make a lot of it. It's getting down to the point where it's almost out. But today I was just putting together a harvest plan, and I thought, well, I got to make this again. So this is another one I got to go back out, and I forgot. I've got to go back and look at records to see even where this Malvasia came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's sort of the drawback of not having the long-term contracts is you're getting stuff when it's good, but if it's a winner like this one, you've definitely got to go find it and maybe pay a little bit more than you got it for, more than likely pay more than you got it for. But
yeah. I'm sure that's going to happen this go around.
nice. So I'm trying to think of the proper way to phrase this question. Like I said, you do a lot of single varietals, but you know, don't necessarily do blends. Is that more of a stylistic choice, or are you looking to do more blends?
White blends I would love to do. I would do more of, but I think right now 4 to 5 red blends out there, but
Okay.
there's more standard red. Um, for instance, I have a red blend that would be my Bordeaux blend, and I make that every year, and I make a lot of it. That's called Sins of Our Past, but that has
Oh,
uh,
nice.
yeah, Cabernet. It's Merlot, Cab Franc, Petit Verdot, and a little bit of Malbec in it. And that I just released the 22, and it just won Best of Class Bordeaux Blend at the Mid-State in Paso Robles, which I
Oh,
was surprised because you're up against, some of the wineries we know very well there
oh
that,
yeah, absolutely. Some of the big guns.
yeah, and I was shocked that I won that. And it was a double gold in Best of Class, but it's released right now. Then I have Civil Servant, and that's a Grenache Syrah Mourvèdre,
Hmm.
and so that's a blend. And then I made a Bordeaux blend called Significant Other that's just released this week, and and then I had Space Captain that was out there. I think it was at Tempranillo, and some other stray dog I threw in there, but they're all doing very well. But oftentimes, when you see the bottles I have that are silk screened, there's maybe 50 cases or so of those. Those are very limited.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. I imagine, given the stray dogs that you're bringing in, you're keeping rigorous notes on the winemaking because you're working with so many different varietals, often as one-off, and you
Oh, yeah.
maybe like any author, you will go back, you'll publish your book, and you'll go back to it and read through it and go, oh, I should have changed this, maybe I should have done this. But I imagine you
Yeah.
keep a lot of notes for if you're revisiting.
I have like little diary books, and there's two of them every year. One is day-to-day functions of what happens in any chemistry that's in a wine. And another one, I take notes specifically on the varietal, what's working, what's not working, what yeasts go into it. And that kind of drives when I get hired, even as a winemaker for somebody else, you write these lengthy pages of protocols, and they're based on a lot of different things, but mostly it's trial and error. Like I said, it's that combination of things. And unfortunately, no one, unless you're a massive winery, has the ability to bring in 20 tons of Cabernet and try 4 different yeasts or different things. So
Right.
every one of those is a digit in the combination. And you may be lucky enough to get something that's great, but you don't know if you couldn't do better. You definitely know you could do worse, but it takes just a lot of trial and error on stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're working as a consulting winemaker, I'm curious about this. Is it typically with the folks who you're contracted with, are you kind of taking control and sort of they bring in the grapes, you're bringing the grapes and sort of dictating, okay, this is the way we're going to make wine? Are you consulting with them? Or are they giving you more protocols or what they're looking for? How does that work?
Well, the Reader's Digest version of that is I tell them, do you have kids? And they say, I've got kids. And I said, you remember dropping them off at kindergarten in the morning and then picking them up in the afternoon? Weren't they better? Didn't the teachers make them better? And I love for people to say, and I get this all the time, we've got 25 tons of Cabernet and we've got 10 tons of this other stuff. And they say, these are the wines we want to make. And I like it when they come in and I just ask them, what do you like? Bring me what you like. And then I make it to what they want when they want. They're allowed to come in and taste it along the way. They could be there during the whole process if they want. But at the end of the day, I have to write the protocols and manage that winemaking. Things go wrong in winemaking every day, I'm sure, as you know. And if you
Yeah.
don't recognize it and you don't manage it and you don't fix it, they get out of hand, and that's when you could lose an inordinate amount of product or money in that case, or just have a
Absolutely.
very bad vintage. Um, I always said a good winemaker is not somebody that makes good wine. A good winemaker is somebody that can get out of trouble at the drop of a hat. Uh, it is truly the magic act of when something goes wrong, recognizing it. No different than what you want your doctor to do. What's wrong with me? Let me look at the lab results. Here's what's wrong. Here's how we're going to fix it. And that's part of my day there. It starts at 5 a.m., but around 3 or 4 in the afternoon or around dinner time, a lot of times I start getting lab results. And if I haven't done them myself, they go out to a lab. So I have to interpret those and then think, here's what I got to do tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's funny. I've heard uh, entrepreneurs and heads of company referred to not so much as businessmen, but your job is basically to take the finite, limited resources you have and allocate them as best as you can to,
Yeah.
hopefully create growth in the company. So sounds like it's very similar in the winemaking. It's basically utilizing the skills you have to try to make sure nothing goes wrong. Put out as many fires as you can.
Yeah. There was a
Pun
time, and
intended.
I was so lucky how I was trained, and I could go to somebody's house and they'll always come to me. They say, we know you're a winemaker. What do you think of this wine? Remember, winemakers, anybody can recognize a good wine.
Yeah.
Anybody. You go to Trader Joe's and walk in and say, I like that wine. That's perfect. A lot of times I'm looking for fault
Yeah.
and for things that are wrong in the wine. And there was a time when I had other winemakers or other vineyard owners in Paso Robles that would call me and say, there's a funny smell in this tank. can you come over and figure this out? And, you know, you get to the point where you do that enough, and here's where the paramedic side comes in, figuring out what's wrong, and then how are we going to identify this and how are we going to get ahead of it and make it right again. I have watched wineries dump, 15,000 gallons of wine out because something went wrong. And then pretty soon it's cost prohibitive to fix it, or the wine's never the same.
Right.
So every morning you're in there doing specific testing on the wine, smelling it, tasting it, but you better be able to recognize when something is starting to go south so you can fix it before it happens, especially in whites. Whites are sometimes very non-forgiving when you're making them. And you get something that's often a white wine. There are certain things you can fix, certain things you just don't get rid of. But that's, of course, when the winemaker goes in and says, oh, look at this unique wine I've made, it's probably a fault.
Yeah, it's if you talk to a lot of winemakers, they'll tell you that the most difficult wine to make isn't a big red, it's a rosé, because there's so much that can go wrong with a rosé.
Yeah, I make a great Provence rosé. I press it out of Grenache. Every time I make it, I made it the first time for a client. Some people wanted to keep buying it. Now I make more and more, and we just section it off to different people. They put their label on it. But I've had people come in and look at it, and everybody in this group knows what a Provence rosé should look like. But I had a gal that came in and she says, well, I want it a darker red. And I started thinking, I said, well, I could do that, but we were on the phone. And I said, from white to fire engine red is a million different colors in the spectrum. So we had to get on the FaceTime each other, and I'd 10 milliliters at a time until I got the colors she wanted. But I was great with it. But at some point, you've got to realize that when you add anything to wine and you say, I love the taste, I love the nose, but I'm going to add some color. When you're adding color from another grape, your taste and your nose starts to change.
Flavor changes, acidity changes. It's the
100%.
pulling of the strings that pull three other strings kind of thing.
Lock. What is the right combination every time? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this is a typo in the silk screening, and this is not a 23.7% ABV wine, unless you're really sneaking that in on us.
I would love to make a white wine at 17%. I tell people if I made anything at 17 at the end of the bottle, I'm beautiful to you. It doesn't matter anything.
Well, this is 6% more than that. This is 23, which I assume it's supposed to be 13.
Yeah, it is definitely lower. I think this originally was just under 13 on that wine. But yeah, when they silk screened them, and they do a great job. I use a company, it's right in the strip where I make these wines in Paso Robles, called Peltier Glass. And they do beautiful work, but it was my fault. I probably didn't proof it right. And yeah, if I ever make a 17% white, we're in business with that. That'll do very well.
Sorry about that. I had an alarm on my phone going off that I needed to stop there. I apologize. Beautiful. Well, let us move on to the Lagrein 2021 Lagrein from Paso Robles. And as we were talking about, this is not just a beautiful, obscure, forgotten varietal, one of my favorites, but now it is truly gone, because this vineyard where this came from, the French Camp Vineyard, they have unfortunately pulled up all of this Lagrein, so it is no longer available.
Yeah, it was again it was another stray dog that walked in, and there wasn't a lot of it out there. And they told me at the time that it is a beautiful Italian varietal, This one's made specific. Any Italian dish, whether it's pizza or whether it's something with a red sauce, works very well with it. Lagrein is a tough varietal to work with. It's kindred to almost Grenache and Syrahs in its taste or the way that it comes out, but it's very dry, tannic, and acidic as it stands.
Yeah.
What I had to do was figure out how to balance it down to make a California red out of it. And so it's the thing that also makes it very unique in Italy is they make them very dry. Here in California, of course, the Paso Robles, we got to put a backbone in it. And this is what came out of it. I took a little bit of blending addition to get it to where I wanted it. But when you smell this, the nose on this, and I shoot for in almost all my reds, is blackberry, strawberry, raspberries, those kind of things.
Yeah.
All my wines, by the way, are, if any, mostly used oak, all three different types of oak, French, Hungarian, and American. But I rarely put new oak on any of these wines because I always try and manage the fruit forwardness instead of the oak. The oak gives it something for sure, but again, new barrels, you could certainly over oak something and get so much smoke or vanilla or chocolate or other
Pepper.
characteristics.
Yeah, there's lots of things.
Other than just the fruit.
Right.
So this came out really well. Again, it goes with tri-tip as well as it does with any, grilled meats as well as it would with any Italian food. Makes me always want to have a pizza or meatballs and red sauce when I taste this, or bolognese.
Yes. Yeah, I won't lie, I am holding back on this one because I am planning to pair it with a nice big ribeye. But at the same time, now that you mention it, like a meat lovers or a butcher block pizza would be a fantastic
Oh
pairing
yeah.
with this. Lagrein, for those who aren't familiar, grown predominantly in what's called the Alto Adige region of Italy, kind of in the very north to northeast of Italy, foothills of the Dolomite Mountains, bordering up against Austria right there, the Tyrol or Sud Tyrol areas, they call it. Super unique in that it's very high elevation, but those foothills, very cool, but with a lot of sun exposure. So you get these grapes that are a little bit on the thinner skins, but have super dark, intense color to it. So like Greg was saying, you've got that the high tannins from the darker skins, but at the same time, grapes with a lot of acidity and those darker, richer berry flavors to them to balance them out. But just a beautiful grape and one of my favorites. And there's definitely a few producers of it here in the Central Coast, but it is definitely a rarity because it's, we are not cool. We are somewhat foothills, but not as cool as it is up in the Alto Adige.
It is really sad, this vineyard is now torn out. And last year I called them and I said, well, when will this tonnage be in? And that's when they told me. They didn't call me ahead of time and tell me that it was gone. Very hard to find. And so I have what's on bottle right now, which is in a lot of cases. But after that, I think I have only a couple barrels left of that, the last vintage to get in bottle. Other than that, it's gone. I'm going to switch to something fairly unique after that, unless I could find more of this. Yeah.
Yeah, we will keep our eyes out for it. Stacy wants to know how long you think this wine could age for.
I think this would age for many, many years. one of the side of that question is the cork used in it is a natural. It's a good cork. Long as it's cellared well, you can get a lot of years out of this. I even believe I would love to taste one of these 10 years from now and see what it's like after it ages. A lot of my wines, when you get something I bought, a lot of people will say, well, if I lay this down, when will it be ready? Most of the wines, when I put it in a bottle, are sometimes very much ready to go. I don't go much past 2 years, sometimes 3 years on barreling something. But by the same token, when I press wines off in a pneumatic press, I really don't press hard. Some press so hard they become very tannic. It takes longer, but I just press to a certain degree on everything and call it a day. I'm probably missing juice, but I'd rather have good quality juice and something somebody's going to have to, sit down for 5 or 10 years to make it enjoyable.
No, that's always a big issue is do you run that second press fraction, that third press fraction? Because at that point you're getting a lot more of the tannins, a lot more of the phenols in it. It can really affect the mouthfeel, the flavors of the wine.
Yeah.
No, this is beautiful and is drinking fantastically. You mentioned you're, not one for new oak. Does that include like your Bordeaux blend? Are you really just kind of focusing on the fruit forward flavors of the wines that are more typically oaked?
Yeah, there's a specific style that I like to stay with, and it's always a food wine. It's always something that can pair with food but not overtake it. And I find, oak certainly adds a lot. But over the years, what I've learned is if you want more oak, you could certainly, there's ways to add oak to wine to get it to where you want it. And you just have to monitor it closely. In fact, today, some of the greatest barrel companies, you could buy oak chains, and it is the equivalency of a new oak barrel when you add it into the wine.
Oh.
But there again, you have to taste the wine often to make sure you don't over oak it. I do make a Pinot Noir, and it never goes into new oak. A lot of people put it in a new oak, and one of the things that scared me is I did this Pinot Noir tasting, and I was in there with some great Pinot Noir producers, and they had put foil over all the bottles so nobody knew what anyone was drinking. And I won't say the name, but it was a guy who's a great Pinot Noir producer. And he got up there and they were pouring wines and he was tasting and giving his opinion. And he said, now see, this is a perfect example of over-oaked Pinot Noir. And when they took the foil off, it was his, unfortunately. So you never want to do that kind of stuff. You want that, fruit forwardness to the wines, but at least that's my style. There might be a style out there where they're very heavy oaky. I know they're out there, but there's got to be a balance. There's got to be a balance in everything.
All right, everybody's clamoring for at least initials of who the winemaker was. Was he a Paso Robles winemaker or a Santa Barbara winemaker?
He was a Santa Barbara. I have a lot of respect for him. Wonderful winemaker, great guy. But, who's to know? I mean, it just, there's certain things that, you're servicing your wines about every other month. And you're always tasting, smelling, looking for problems. And certainly in new barrels, if they're over oak, that's a problem to me because they're only going to get worse. You can't pull oak off of it.
Right.
You could run them through every filter you want, but you can't get oak off of them.
Yeah.
There's certain things that just don't go away. Eucalyptus is another one. I've had people bring in grapes for me to make, and immediately I can tell there was a eucalyptus tree nearby.
Yep.
Those are the kind of things that are near impossible to get off their wines, and people recognize it. So yeah.
Yeah, one of those things that people don't think about, but I've definitely had some wines that have had some the proximity to the eucalyptus, and you can pick it up immediately. It's crazy how pungent it can be.
You got to be a good used car salesman. You say, "Look, I can make this Zinfandel is."
It'll clear the nostrils. It'll clear you right up. Exactly.
Yeah. Who's been in a steam room with this wine?
So Jeannie wants to know what was the excuse given by the vineyard owners for savagely ripping out the precious Lagrein vines?
So what happens out there is, if you can imagine a guy coming to your house to put your new roof on, and he's 90 years old, you're not going to get a lot of production out of that. What's happening is some of those vineyards have been in since the 60s or 70s. The grapevines start to get tired. They do get disease. Very common in Paso Robles is red blotch.
Mm-hmm.
And when something gets red blotch, if you can imagine an artery or a vessel, it tightens down on it and twists down. Pretty soon, the nutrients and the water aren't getting to the foliar part of the wine or the grapes. When you were once producing 4 or 5 tons an acre, you're now producing 3/4 of a ton per acre, and they're losing money. So they pull those grapes out and then they transplant them. So if you can imagine, there's hundreds of clones to each varietal. So Cabernet, let's say there's 150 clones. Some of them are named very well after somebody, or they have these fantastic romantic names. But then all of a sudden, in today's world, it can be like UC 4654, and that stands for UC Davis. And they have a number that's resistive to not getting enough water, for instance, or pushing off red blotch and things like that. So they're good producers. Or if they want something darker in the red color, less tannin, these new varietals come out. So as they're tearing out vineyards, they're putting in new things. And again, like Lagrein, there's not, hundreds of winemakers out there in California saying, where can we find Lagrein? Like you and I would,
Right.
but you don't see a lot of places out there breaking down the doors. So farmers aren't putting in Lagreins and Cinsos and
Yeah.
all the strange things that are out there because they just can't sell them. Yeah.
Especially larger, more corporately owned vineyards where there's a lot of analysis that goes into sort of maximizing your revenue per acre, revenue per square foot there. So
Yeah, there was a time when, and I forgot how many years, maybe around 2007, 8, 9, 10, when Syrah, and we all know that Merlot fell out
right.
after that movie
The
came out.
sideways, yes. Yeah.
And everybody started tearing out Merlot. All of a sudden, a time came along, everybody was tearing out their Syrah. Now, everybody wants Syrah again. And anybody that drinks a Bordeaux blend, there's Merlot in it. And, Merlot is a great standalone grape. I make a Merlot. I put most of it into my blend, but whatever's left over, I'll do like 50 cases of Merlot. People still love it. Still a great wine. Yeah.
No, it was, we've talked about this before on our virtual tastings, is the problem with Merlot was that movie came out kind of right at the peak of Merlot, almost surpassing Cab as kind of the generic, I always call it the convention center wine. So you had a lot of just really bad examples of Merlot out there. And I think justified, that movie came along and, you know, it sort of flushed out the market. Obviously, it hurt a lot of Merlot producers, but I believe it kind of took out a lot of the bad Merlot and forced people to reevaluate how they were looking at the grape, what they were doing with it, how they were making it. And what's nice is, yeah, you're starting to really see it come back strongly. It's funny because now I feel like we're going through the same cycle with Pinot Noir, where people are getting burned out by so many bad examples of Pinot Noir out there, which of course Sideways helped elevate, that people are sort of moving away from that and into other things.
Yeah, it's strange, if you're the farmer and you're used to making a certain amount of money every year and you have these long-term contracts, people pull out of them. And then they say, well, that varietal is just not popular anymore. And that's one of the things about being the wineries out there that have the winemaker and the vineyard all under the same roof. They really don't have a choice.
Right.
Unless they want to tear those grapes out or leave the mother vine in and then transplant into that another, you could turn it into anything at that
Yeah.
point.
But you're looking at like a 2 to 5 year lag time, even grafting on top of it. So that's the downside.
The dollars
Right.
on that aspect. So I used to make dolcetto, and the guy told me, he says, selling this, he says, it's a beautiful fruit, and it really was, but he said, nobody's buying the dolcetto, so he left the mother vine in and transferred the, implanted Syrah into that mother vine, which is probably miles into the earth.
Right.
At the end of the day, I mean, there's guys out there probably now looking for good dolcetto or dolcetto rosé.
Well, that's the thing, is if you're a smaller grower, I always recommend planting a little bit of some of the more obscure stuff because you are going to find somebody who is interested in it. But if you're a larger corporate vineyard, that's where you're not going to have as much interest. And unfortunately, that's kind of what happened with French Camp. Scott, to answer your question, how long do the trends last? It's like any trend. I remember maybe 15 years ago in Paso Robles, it seemed like everybody was doing Tempranillo and everybody thought that Tempranillo was going to be the next hot grape in Paso Robles. And it just never took off. By the same accords, I keep hearing that, Grenache is going to be the new Pinot Noir. And we're going to start seeing more single vineyard Grenaches, and Grenache vineyards are going to start being held in the same way that Burgundy vineyards are. And that's a trend that has been, trying to get kickstarted for the last 20 years or so. So
easy way to look at that, there's gotta be a guy on this right now that's still wearing skinny jeans. It's a trend, isn't it? I mean, you can still wear them, and maybe it's good, maybe it isn't. But
or still rocks his trilby or his fedora hat when he goes out and goes swing dancing and sees Big Bad Voodoo Daddy in concert.
Exactly. Yeah, you just never know.
Perfect. We're getting a little low on time, so let us move on to our last wine. The old something new, something borrowed, something blue. This is definitely something old. Alicante Bouschet, one of the more interesting historical grapes of California, a longtime legacy grape. How did you come to decide? Was this another stray dog that sort of came through the back door, or how did you decide to start producing Alicante, such a unique grape?
Yeah, there was one of the farming guys that I've had contracts with all the time. was I was buying a unique Cabernet clone from him. And we stood out there and started talking, and he kind of knows that I can't pass anything up. And he looked at me and smiled and he said, "Hey, why don't you buy my Alicante?" And immediately in my mind, I thought, well, where the heck am I ever going to sell this? But it sounded intriguing. I like a good Alicante Bouschet. You don't see it often. So I said, as long as you don't sell me any more than 2 tons, I'll take it. And he brought it in. Another vineyard, which I think is not there anymore. It's on the west side of Paso Robles. It was a very small amount. And at the time, everybody was making way for the things that are popular. And this Alicante came out. You're right, it is historical. I think it's 1860s or 1830s.
Yeah, one of the first grapes planted in California.
Yeah, you don't see it often a lot, but it is a really nice, full-bodied, darker red. As I recall, in blending, a lot of people were blending Alicante into Cabernet to give it color and backbone. But to me, it's a great standalone. And again, it's one of those, if at best, I probably do 50 to 70 cases a year. There's only one more vintage backing this one, unless I go out and find it. Again, you might not see this one come again. Yeah.
Yeah, although not so much in Paso, but I know there is Alicante out there. It's just a matter of whether you want to, start looking for it a little bit further north, further east, where there's some
Yeah.
vats of it. Yeah, one of the most interesting things about Alicante Bouschet, and I know we've talked about this before, is it's what's called a Teinturier grape,
Oh,
which is a French term for basically a color. So, you know, 99.9% of grapes out there, no matter what the color of the skin, the juice inside of it is clear. But Alicante Bouschet, the juice is actually red. So to
yeah.
Greg's point earlier, it's long been used as a blending grape to add a darker, more robust color to certain grapes. And also, it's got a lot of tannins to it. Very, very thick-skinned grape, dark-colored, thick-skinned grape. So really, really tannic. So if you've got a lighter style Cab or a Merlot or a Syrah or Petit Syrah, and you want to add a little bit more tannin to it, Alicante Bouschet was always a great blender to add to it. Given its tannic nature, and you using mostly neutral barrels, is this one of those grapes that you're holding back a little bit in barrel to really soften it up? How do you make it more approachable and drinkable?
Again, I don't press it hard at all. I ferment these type of grapes. I ferment on oak chips. It sits on oak chips continually through the fermentation process, but I'm very gentle with it. And when those tannins naturalize and become softer, that's when it's time to get this into. It could take a little, you could put a lot of oak on this, but you really don't have to. This one maybe is a little more fruit forward, but you can pick up in this a little bit of spiciness to it.
Yeah.
And it's very important what yeast you use. There's a lot of different yeast out there, and when you buy yeast, they really don't talk about the forgotten grapes when you buy the yeast.
No, they don't have the right yeast for a Lagrein or a Scapatino or things like that.
So you really have to be careful and look at the characteristics, or even blending yeast or natural yeast. But in this case, this came out great. And again, it's another sauce-based or Italian food or red meat wine for certain. And this one goes really well with meat and cheese platters. It does really well.
I think what's so interesting about this is you mentioned dolcetto earlier, and I can see a lot of similarities because it's got that big burst of fruit on it, but because of its sort of sneaky high acidity, it really cleanses the palate. There's a cleanliness. There's not a lot of length to this wine. It kind of just hits the mid palate and disappears. So you're not getting a lot of residual flavor and length on it, which, you know, is great for richer, saltier foods where you need that sort of burst of fruit to counter it, but you don't necessarily want the lingering effects of the wine.
Yeah, I had this not too long ago. It's funny, I went to the Hollywood Bowl and it was great symphony there, but I was in a box that a chef owns, and he brought smoked duck, and I had this Alicante. It was wonderful with smoked duck. So, yeah.
I can see that. Definitely. I could almost do like if you did a grilled cheese, but did it with a very sharp cheddar cheese.
Oh, yeah.
I think this would be interesting because you've got that sort of burst of flavor that'll mess with the you know, mix with the saltiness, but then you're going to get more of the cheese flavor on the finish, so you'll get that sort of that longer food hang time rather than the wine dominating on the finish.
I think I had it once with crab cakes too.
Oh.
In New England. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that game meat, it's really good. It's almost like something you would make a reduction sauce out of if you were having a game meat of some kind.
Yeah, I could see that. Although, yeah, since game meat tends to be very lean, this is a nice wine with that higher acid that you don't necessarily need to have the heavy fattiness. So like a bison or an elk or something like that. Scott says he's not reducing this down at all. So there's no reason to reduce
Drink it.
We're not salting this wine to make it into a cooking wine.
Very good. I like that.
Beautiful.
And there's another one. I think there's probably each year there's probably 50 to 75 cases made, and it's coming down to its end also, and it'll be pushed probably by some of the other very unusual reds that'll be coming this year.
Nice. Well, that's a good segue to kind of talk about what your total case production is. It sounds like most of your lots are in that smaller range, 50 to 75. And along those lines, what else do you have coming up? What should we be looking forward to?
Well, there's all the red blends, and those are not more forgotten grapes. Those are the standard grapes. A lot of my 22s are being released. Every year, as you service wine, you always end up with a barrel of whatever's left over. And every year I put out I just call it Harvest Blend. It's done in a silk screen bottle. The silk screen is glow in the dark in case you get in any trouble. You just enjoy yourself at night. It's a great bottle to drink. It changes every year. I couldn't tell you what was in it half the time, because if I have 5 gallons of something left over or 10 gallons, it all goes into the same barrel and sits there until it's really good, and then I bottle that up. That's only typically about 24 cases.
Oh, wow.
And anybody that
Single
works
barrel.
in harvest, all the cellarmen that I have working for me that year, whether they're contract or full-time, everybody gets 1 case, and then I just have the rest for me or for
Oh,
cells.
wow. So you're really looking at like 10 to 12 cases, basically.
Probably about, yeah, maybe 15 cases of that stuff, but it's always very good. And again, the bottle's always fun to look at. Coming up in barrel, I have a really unusual grape. It's called Marcelon, and the plant itself was a cross between Grenache and Cabernet.
Yeah.
And that's the grape, or those two blended together. You're not back blending.
It's a hybrid grape. So it's basically a crossbreed of those two grapes that started in the sort of north of Barcelona and in the Languedoc, Roussillon area of France is where it came to. And now it's one of the accepted grapes of Bordeaux.
Yeah. And there's very little of it growing in Paso Robles, but I have a grower there, a very small grower.
Is it
And
Santellan Vineyards? Because I thought they were growing it there.
it's a gentleman that is a doctor at Harvard UCLA.
Oh,
And he's OBGYN, but he just has his little vineyard and he has that stuff growing.
let's plant
And
Marcelon. Sure, why not?
yeah, and he said I put it in because I thought it would be popular, and it was, and nobody knew what it was again. So of course I took it. Um, Another thing I have coming out, which is really unusual, and it's going to get bottled, I think, this month. It's a Malbec that comes off of another doctor's property that's in Pasadena. And for anybody has ever, I know you've heard of this grape, Arani, and there's a white and a red, and he had both white and red, and I make his wine for him, and it's a Merlot and a Malbec. But the day I went out there, really nice guy, he serves lunch to everybody on Harvest Day, and I saw these 3 or 4 rows that they didn't touch, and I said, what's wrong with that? Why aren't you picking that? And he said, oh, nobody wants that. It's called Irony. And he went in the house and came out with this book. And the pages in the book were articles and letters. And when he grew up around Mount Ararat. And Irony was originally thought to be the grape that came from Noah. That was Noah's planting near the ark. The plants are still there and still thriving. And when he left and became a physician to come to the US, they gave him a bundle of them. They're very protected there, but he put them in the ground. His vineyard is called Noah's Vineyard. And so there wasn't enough, but I combined that with the Malbec. So it's a very historical.
Yeah.
And it came out beautiful, and I'm getting ready to bottle that. So a very historical piece of wood that came out of the Mount Ararat area, directly near Noah's Ark.
And
But
he's growing these in Pasadena?
he lives in Pasadena
Oh,
now. He's a successful surgeon there, but he's got a beautiful house in Templeton Gap,
oh, okay.
and this is where his Malbec and his Merlot are growing, and his few little areas of irony growing up there. A really
Amazing.
nice stuff. And then Senso will be another unusual one that I'm bringing in. And, Senso is funny. It can stand alone, but typically it goes into the blend. So we'll see what we see when we make it.
Yeah, Cinso is one of those that yeah, if the vines need a little bit more age than normal to really take out some of the green notes in it, unless you're going to make a rosé with them. But the red version, some of the younger Cinsos I've had can have a real vinous kind of green note, which counters that like fresh strawberry maraschino cherry note to them. So
Which is really nice in a wine.
yeah.
I've had a couple in Paso Robles that I absolutely love. And I always tell people when I find a place that has great stuff, and I love Jason Bouchon at Bouchon Winery.
Yep,
He
good friend of
makes
mine.
standalone Senso,
Yeah.
beautiful wine, and he's a great winemaker. I've always told him, I said, you're one of the best winemakers in Paso Robles. Nobody knows it. And he's been doing it forever, but wonderful, wonderful
And
standalone Senso.
and born and raised in Riverside, California, where a lot of our members are from here. So that
Yeah,
was one of the things that we bonded over when he and I became friends. He is a great winemaker, but he is also one of the biggest curmudgeons that we have in Paso Robles. He's always
yeah.
complaining about something.
Oh yeah, he does. Yeah. He's been winemaker actually in a lot of different places as well. He's a contract guy like I am, but man, I could go sit in his tasting room. And just recently, another thing I have coming out, and I bought the barrels from him. Um, I've got a bourbon aged barrel Zinfandel and a Merlot that's completely in old bourbon barrels.
Nice.
But I did it only because I love the one he made.
Yeah.
And so you get the notes of the oak, heavy oak, and you get the notes of the bourbon, but it's a wonderful wine. Alcohol's a little bit higher. It leaches in there, but again, I will be
I mean,
beautiful if you
as
finish.
long as it's not at 23.7 white, you're fine. So
If
you're
I
good.
3 point red, but it's going to be up there. I'm thinking around the 15.5 to 16, but again, sometimes you got to make a wine like that. Just
Yeah.
see what happens.
Well, you've got a lot of people who you've now put on your radar for not only the bourbon barrel Zin and Merlot, but also the Arad wine, the
Yeah,
Arion wine.
yeah,
Exactly. So
yeah.
yeah, they definitely want to know what that is going to be called. So if folks are interested in tasting your wines, buying more, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you or to buy? Obviously, they can do it at the Festival of Forgotten Grapes, but you're only bringing a limited amount, and that's, once a year. So how do they refill in the other times?
So you can go to my website, Cuatro Dias Wines, and you'll find me there. There is a mail. If you sign up for the emails, you're not obligated to anything. The wine club is there, but you're not obligated to anything. But it just tells you where I'm pouring, and I pour all over. In fact, I'll be at Wine Shop, SHOPPE in Torrance on Saturday. If you get there at 3 o'clock, I'll be pouring 6 wines. But I do tastings, pourings, dinners all over. In fact, if you ever have a function in home, I do them sometimes up to like 4, 5, 6 couples where I just go in people's homes and pour wine through, and they put food out. I bring the wines and we talk our way through it. People can ask questions, but I do those all the time too.
Nice. Perfect.
But definitely go to the website and check it, or if you sign up on the email, I will definitely be somewhere near you sometime. That's guaranteed.
Yeah, when we send out the replay tomorrow, we'll include your email address on this so that folks can contact you directly. Sandy and Larry want to know if you have any more Alicante borscht, which sounds delicious to make borscht with the Alicante Bouschet. I
Oh,
assume you
really?
meant the Alicante Bouschet.
Yeah, there's definitely Alicante there. It's on the website. If you are military, civil servant, police, fire, nurse, doctor,
Retired judge.
retired judge, or just press the button that says you're a civil servant, you get a
Okay.
discount with that on my website.
Yeah.
Like to benefit everybody with that. And
Yeah, a lot of the wines that we had here tonight are not necessarily on Greg's website because he has so many SKUs and limited amounts of them. He kind of puts the stuff that's a little more robust in terms of its volume on the site, but he does have a lot of stuff, so that's why it's great to just be able to contact him directly and find out, case-wise what he's got of the wines you like, whether it's the Lagrein, the Alicante, the new stuff that's coming out. I'm sure when that happens, he'll put that on the site or sign up for that email because I know you and Ashley, who handles your marketing for you, will keep people apprised of all the new releases you have coming out.
and if you're in Paso Robles during harvest, I get there late August. I don't leave until probably second week in November. But if you're there, contact me. You can come to the winery and watch some of the operations. You can probably do some barrel tasting if it's slow, and I have no problem with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically from December to August, he's in Torrance.
Yeah.
And then for the rest of the time from I guess mid-August through the end of November, you're up in Paso Robles, so that's where to get a hold of you. So
That's correct.
beautiful. Well, fantastic. Greg, if you don't mind sticking around for a couple of minutes, we'll unmute if anybody wants to unmute and ask Greg some questions. Please feel free. We are happy to fill in the blanks on anything that didn't get answered tonight. Or forever hold your peace.
I'll unmute. I always feel like I want to go first, so I was
Oh,
holding back.
you should always go first, Jody.
I loved everything. Amazing. I didn't try the one. I have a hard time pronouncing these, so, but beautiful. I didn't try the last one. Same one you saved, Chris.
Oh, I saved the Lagrein. So the
Me
last one
too.
I'm drinking. Oh, okay.
Me too, because I
I'll let
forgot the
Kaylani.
order at the end. But I too, the reason I asked the order tonight, I would normally know the order, but that orange Muscat really, I thought it was going to be the ending wine, so I held off.
It was the spanner in the works.
Everything, the look, the smell, the texture, the taste, the labels. I love the, what do you call it? Screening,
Yeah,
That's so
the silk screening.
silk screening.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Love it. I just wish I could pronounce these things. So that was it for me.
The more of these you attend, the more you'll learn to pronounce them. It's just
I'm
practice.
challenged. I'm
Practice
very
makes
challenged.
perfect. Yes.
Let's
But
just say.
that's the beauty of having a place like Forgotten Grapes, because those grapes come around and, if somebody doesn't appreciate those, that's when they go away. And you don't want any of these to go away
No,
ever.
they're wonderful. And you had me at Vermentino. I love them, Vermentino.
Beautiful wine.
Yes. So thank you. That was my little spill for the night.
Yeah, I know the Greg, I can put you in touch with the Margette Vineyard or Margette Vineyard. They have Vermentino and are looking for buyers this year.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely love it. Yeah.
You got it.
Okay, I'm muting myself.
Okay. You can stay muted if you want.
Greg, yeah, it was fun to see like all the wines you have. I hadn't been, I mean, despite the fact I've, tasted your wines the last 2 years at Forgotten Grapes, and it's so fun to have you here again. I love talking to you in person, but this is amazing. And I didn't realize like the extent of your portfolio, like what you have and all the grapes you used. And do you like to use red versus white, or do you have one preference or the other? Or is that like asking you like who's your favorite, kid or grandkid,
It's a funny thing. I've actually blended whites into reds. I've done all kinds of things. When I first started in 2001, I remember blending Rhones across to Bordeaux or Bordeaux to Rhones, or adding whites to reds. And I remember other winemakers telling me, you're going to destroy this. This is a bad idea. But at the end of the day now, everybody's very creative. I, at one time, and I still on occasion will do oil paintings. I never go in and buy 3 colors and paint everything. When you go in, you buy 15, 20, 30 colors to paint while you're painting, or you're mixing things in order to make those colors. And there is no limit. There's not any limiting factors on what you should or shouldn't do other than make really good wine. That's it. And you just never know till you try it.
Add in your wine, your glass.
Yes. Sorry, Jody, or sorry, Stacy. Jody wants to know where your background is. Is that the Amalfi Coast? Is that Portofino?
Yes, and Positano is the
Positano, sorry, yes, yeah.
Amalfi, yes, same. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so Greg, do you have a preference of like working with more red blends? Is it not necessarily easier, or is one more fun than the other, of like mixing the reds or the whites, or like do you
I love reds, but I'm beginning to the whites are so much work, and you worry about them so much, but I'm beginning now to like to deal with the whites more. And they are very difficult, and things go wrong with them color wise. Trying to manage the nose that's on them, the color, the taste. And I'm starting now, and it's funny, this point of my career in winemaking or my life, I'm starting to really doing a lot of research and wanting to make old world white wines, the ones where they ageable whites where they sit for 6, 8, 10 years, but they have that really nice, they're bigger wines. They have that really nice caramel to them, and they're a little darker.
A little bit of oxidation to them, but not overpowering, just to kind of round them out and provide context.
Food wines. And in value, when you go somewhere and you buy those wines, they're not overly expensive, but there's great winemakers and there's collectors that have had these down for years. But they're some of the best food wines I think I've ever had in my life. Yeah, love them.
It's interesting. So it kind of sounds like blending red is kind of blending reds. If it's a little easier, it's sort of like cooking versus blending whites is more like baking. It has to be way more precise and more measured and kind of like more chemistry and science, where reds can kind of be like, throw this in the pan, throw this, and it sort of balances more than the specificity of like a baking, following the recipe to get that. Is that kind of?
That's a great analogy. Whites are very needy. Things go wrong with them. You're protecting them from oxygen. You're protecting them from losing anything that's reds. They kind of come in and you can force them a little more. They can take a little oxygen. They need a little oxygen, but they're very forgiving. Whites aren't nearly as forgiving. When I make whites, it typically there's an extra cost in there. Everything I do is done on dry ice. From the time you press them to the time they hit a tank, to the time they're pumped, to finding the next tank. You're using a lot of enzymes to try and protect your colors and the phenolic compounds that you don't want to lose. But as you see, when I make a white wine, where that translates is that beautiful nose and fruitiness that you get. Because you'll go out and taste white wines in places or get them in a restaurant, and they really don't taste like much. They really don't smell like much. So yeah, they're very flat, and then you lose things on the mouthfeel. So it really is highly technical, and for some reason I'm leaning into, and I hate it at this point in my life. I'd rather relax, but I tell people all the time, I get out of the winery sometimes during harvest at midnight or 1 a.m. I know that I have to be up again at 5 or so. And there are times I would lay there in bed and worry to death about what's happening in a Viognier or a Sauvignon Blanc or an Albarino, which I make. And, it's an unhealthy relationship.
Yeah, my analogy would be like it's having the jock son or daughter versus the sensitive artistic son or daughter. Like, it's satisfying when the jock, becomes the captain of the basketball team or the football team or whatnot. But watching the artistic child, go on to be the lead in the play or whatnot, because you're a little more protective of them and sensitive to them, is probably a little more satisfying.
Yeah. I mean, you have to treat it so delicately, whites and even rosés. If you're making a Provence rosé, if you're treating it like, even a red wine, rosés sometimes, in my opinion, don't get all the respect they deserve, but a beautiful rosé that's very aromatic and pairs up with food and it's still delicate. You definitely have to have the respect for it to get it where you want it. And if you don't, it's just another rosé. You can get those anywhere, but you lose so much in it if you're not careful with every single step of the process.
I get them for $3.99 and $4.99 at grocery outlet, and they're, off-year Provence rosés, and they're delicious. So yeah, there's not a lot of respect.
The other night I went to, I go to dinner once a week with a bunch of chefs and a bunch of wine people. And the guy brought, they always try to stump me with something. And this one they put foil on, but I could see a little bit of the rosé and I could see the color. And he said, well, I want you to tell me where it's from and what it is and what you think it's worth. So, you know, it's always, I know something's going to be unusual because that's what they got to stump you with. But I looked, I said, just looking at that little bit of color, it's a Provence rosé. And he says, okay, well, you're right there now. But I smelled it and I said, oh, there's more vet in this. And I said, but it's heavy Grenache. And he says, well, you're right there. But he pulled the foil off. And I said to him, I said, this is a wonderful rosé. And when he pulled it off, it was a current Trader Joe's rosé, but it was very good. $7 a bottle.
Yeah, I was at grocery outlet the other day and I got Jean-Luc Colombo, the something blue. I can't remember what it is, but it's a rosé that you'll find at places for 17, 18, 22, 23, $24 a bottle. And it was, you know, $4.99. So I'm super excited about it. Just a steal of the century.
That's why I tell people all the time, you know, you can find what I've discovered over the years, and everyone expects a winemaker to know good wines and expensive wines. But at the end of the day, it's whatever you like. If it's good to you and it pairs with your food at home and you get it at a good price, it's the best thing that can happen to you. And there's tons of European wines that are sold here in the US and they're inexpensive, but they're some of the best wines I've ever tasted. But you just got to be out there tasting all the time, all the time.
Yeah. Find them, and if you find something you like, grab as much of it as you can, because odds are it's on a closeout and you won't find it again.
Yeah, what happens? I find that all the time. And then, you know, somebody say, how could you drink that? And I'm like, because it's good. It doesn't matter what it says on the label. It doesn't matter where it's made. It could, you know, I once said a good winemaker can get anybody on this Zoom tonight can go to a winery in Napa Valley and get Cabernet and make a good Cabernet. If the Cabernet is coming from Selma and you make that a great Cabernet, that's the mark of a good winemaker.
Right.
You force it in to make it what you want. Yeah.
Exactly.
I find it absolutely fascinating that you've gone from being a civil servant to being a winemaker. It just blows my mind. I mean, I paid for my college education working for a police department.
Oh, yeah.
And it just, you know, to go, and you did it on your 4 days off.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, I am impressed. I am blown
I
away.
brought up my vacation time. I traded shifts with guys. They knew it. And when harvest came, I would cash it all in. And they were very respectful of it. They were nice. And by the way, you worked at a police department. Do you know the one thing policemen and firemen had in common?
What?
Ex-wives.
We all wanted to be firemen.
Say it again. I'm sorry, Chris got me.
Sorry.
I said we all wanted to be firemen. Oh yeah.
Oh.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Amazing.
Best 2 careers ever. That's for sure.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Any other
Finishing
questions for Greg?
evening with
Oh,
the
go ahead,
Muscat.
Patty.
And I just think that this is a wonderful wine without food, just to finish all of the wines that we've had.
To wash away a bad day, isn't it? Or a good day in that case.
Hulk Hogan died, so it's a good day.
And by the way, Ozzy Osbourne passed away of all
He did.
things.
And Chuck Mangione died today as well. Like, which is very sad. Yeah.
Boy. Yeah, so many greats.
It does
Yeah.
not feel so good.
That one does not. No.
No.
Well, if
Exactly.
anybody wonders where some of the names of my wines come from, I tell them there's some unusual names out there, but a lot of that comes from late at night, drinking a lot of wine and blending. And I have an incredible sound system in the winery. It reverberates through concrete. But a lot of times I'm listening to live concerts on Pandora, and the name of a song will come up or something, and it happens at the time when the wine is good. And I've named some of the wines after that. Like Space Captain came. One night I was listening to, oh, by the way, I had a red wine called Madman Across the Water. That's an Elton John song. It came on late one night and it was very loud in there, and I made a blend and it was beautiful. And when I put it together, there was roughly 3 pallets, and it was great. I couldn't wait to sell it. And for those of you that know the Jonathan Club in Los Angeles, they tasted the first bottle and they said, "Well, take it. How much is there?" And I said, "Well, there's 3 pallets. How many cases do you want?"
We'll
And
take
they
all the
said,
pallets.
"At all, we don't want anyone else to have it." It went there and sold out immediately. And as you hate selling it, you do want it to go away at the same time so you can continue good work.
That's a nice feather in his cap. And Scott, much like Ozzy Osbourne, there are no bats in his cellar because he bites the heads off of them if he catches them. So
Of course, that's how it works.
exactly.
Well, I'm not above that kind of thing either, but here we go. That's a whole other podcast.
That's true.
So I was going to ask one other question, because I know you'd mentioned, and I apologize if I missed this, but I know you said the label on the white came from your granddaughter, but the logo on the red of the sun and the face, like where did that come from? And I'm sorry if I missed that earlier, but
No, we didn't talk about it. Good question.
it's
Well,
beautiful. It's a great logo.
Well, what happened to me was I worked, not only did I work my hours, but I worked tons of overtime. And I used to say to myself, I work from the time the sun comes up to the time the sun goes down. What you see there in that is the sun and the moon blended together in that logo. And guys would laugh at me and they're like, I don't know how you can push that amount of hours out all the time. But that's where that logo came from.
Love it.
Yeah, it's
Very,
beautiful.
very
Who
symbolic.
did the drawing? Do you have somebody that did it, or did you
I went to a
sketch it, or?
it's a graphic artist that did these. Now, when I get the, a lot of times you walk over to, it's Peltier glass, and they've got a guy over there that, you know, pardon this, but he's just, I always tell him he's crazy as hell, but you could sit down in front of him and tell him what you're thinking for a label, just your feelings even, or what it represents. And he sits there and he's so smart, but he's so unusual. And he starts putting together designs. He's a computer master. And you say, well, I want this put in there and I want that put in there. And he does it. And at the end, you end up doing the art with him. He'll put it on the computer for you. And at the end of the day, that's how some of these strange labels come out. And I do have some strange labels out there. None of them tonight, but they're out there floating around in various varietals.
Greg, those winemaker hours that you described, in Texas, they call that working from dawn to dark 30.
It happens. There are times I swear you're tired, wet, and cold, and you just think all I want to do is finally go home and take a warm shower and go to sleep. But I've told people before, I feel like the resident physician that has the sickest patients in the intensive care, and you cannot blink an eye or something will go wrong. In a lot of things, there are a lot of things you could fix. There are some things you just can't fix once it's happened. There's no going backwards. So you kind of stay there. There was a time I remember falling asleep in a chair next to a very large tank that was worrisome. And at the end of the day, it came out. Grapes in the Vinifera, which are the winemaking grapes, want to be wine. And they'll do everything they can to get you there, but you have to protect them from, again, shepherd them and protect them against anything that's going to come against them. And it's truly a labor of love, but at the end of the day, you know where you have to be, and that's where the winemaker comes in. So oftentimes you have to go after the bad things and make them go away. It's the easiest way to say it.
I'm glad you fell asleep in the chair next to the tank as opposed to in the tank. That would have been bad.
Oh yeah, that would have been a problem. And I always got to worry, am I tired because I'm tired, or I'm tired because of the carbon dioxide levels in the water?
Yeah, that's the problem with the 2 a.m. punch downs, is you have no idea what's exactly affecting you and making you sleepy at that point.
You know, you ask a lot of your cellar guys, and they work really hard. They work as hard as you do, if not harder. But imagine yourself with, and you know, now that I have all these other clients, I might have, I could have up to 15 different fermentations going on at one time at varying levels. So you have to keep track of everything. You can't even write that because there's no way you have the time to write it down to keep track of it. So your brain has to be working on all of those things at one time. Something goes wrong, you have to pay attention to that and be careful that you're not spreading that onto other things that are going on. So a lot happening at once. But I love to come home when harvest is over and
collapse in your home.
Yeah, it's completely behind you. And I'm, you know, in a lot of ways, I'm glad I'm retired now. And, you know, when I was working, my friends that were winemakers, and it brings me back to that Amalfi Coast or Positano background. My friends that are winemakers, at the end of harvest, when they get everything on barrel, they go on vacation for a month or so. Me, I would come back home, and within 24 hours, I was right back at the fire department riding an engine, a ladder truck, or a paramedic rescue. And they laughed at me, but I used to tell them, well, one of us is going to have a retirement. That was me.
Although, Greg, you're not really retired. You just gave up one of your multiple careers so you can focus on the other one.
Yeah, absolutely correct. That's
perfect. Well, on that note, since we are over 2 hours, I think it's best if we shut this down. I appreciate it. Hopefully, this has been super educational. Greg, thank you again. We appreciate it. And I know you're going to have a lot of visits to expect, a lot of emails coming soon, and a lot of purchases from your website.
Thanks a lot. It's great to be here.
Great. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next month for Stephen Kent Wines, all Cab Franc. Very, very exciting. If you haven't signed up yet, we'll see you soon. All right. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
So much.